upon Manish Basan, Global Head of Sustainability, Procurement and Managing Director from Merck, Saurabh Lal, Director Supply Chain, Kellogg's Company, Sanjay Sethi, Sustainability Expert, Kiran Sarkar, Head Sustainability, Mahindra & Mahindra, Automotive and Farm Equipment Sector, Ashish Pandey, Head of Supply Chain, South Asia Region, Nestle, and Achal Sood, Director, Global Center of Excellence from SAP. Thank you all of you for joining here. And I would now like to again invite on stage Dr. Rakesh Singh to lead the discussion ahead with panel 1 members. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone.
So thank you for joining me on this first sustainability town hall in the domain of supply chain. And I think Kiran also has joined us, right? She's there. Anchal also is there. Fine. So as I said in the beginning, this is also a very new relative field for all of us, not because sustainability and climate change and environmental protection has not been issues in the world. They have been, there for long, but somehow they have made inroad into strategies of organization a bit slowly. But in the last few years and last decade, I see there's a lot of changes, and these changes are accelerating at a pace, which is unheard of. If you look at COP26 and look at the number of corporate presentations on the business front, you find that it has acquired a very strong importance in the strategy of world decarbonization. But also when you look at it from a firm's perspective, from not so much from a nation's perspective, companies have come and they have realized that given the nature of world society, world economy, and world politics, the way it's moving, it is going to be very critical for them to adopt to these changes, which are, very important to be a responsible organization, as well as use these changes in a more critical fashion, in a more strategic fashion, so that businesses don't lose focus. The COVID-19 has brought about its own pressure on climate change processes, and it has made imperative for everyone to think in that direction. And primarily because COVID-19 aftershocks and reimagination of the new normal clearly makes it clear that if there is an opportunity today, then the supply chain opportunity in our context is one where can we innovate our supply chain digitally, physically, in such a manner that it brings in a huge amount of resiliency factor into the strategy, and also brings in more sustainable and responsible framework. So to kick off this particular panel, we have a very interesting panel, and I was wondering how do I orchestrate this with so many different interests, newer issues in the whole process. And but I thought I'll seek some responses. Some responses were very generic, some were very, very, very specific, and that complicated my understanding of climate neutrality in a big way. But as it's a learning curve for all of us, we will start with a larger framework, and I will invite Kiran Sarkar from Mahindra to take us into the whole dilemma of sustainability and need for sustainability in a broader framework of organization, not the supply chain, and where the supply chain actually fit in that sense, Kiran.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, this question, whenever I answer in the panel, what happens is there are different views around sustainability which are going on, right? People who are linked to the field of sustainability and people who are not linked to the field of sustainability, there's a mixed audience. And where I come from is, I'm working in sustainability field for religiously for almost last 8 to 9 years. And I was there when sustainability was a side dish for a main menu, and from there it was driven, and specifically at Mahindra now it forms a center for that particular main course. And the entire dilemma around why we should do sustainability and what is sustainability exactly, it is the perception is changing slowly. What has happened over the years is we have experienced, and we always demonstrate that sustainability is not something, a separate process, or side process which is there in the business. It is integrated in the business, and we call it as a ESG or sustainability, whatever name you call it. It is the next business opportunity. Mr. Anand Mahindra has always said in all of the economic forums again and again that if you don't, proceed sustainable way, then you lose the opportunity for the business also. And all of us have seen what has happened post-COVID, and how the ESG investments have increased so much. And if I have to put some numbers, almost ESG investment have increased 5-fold in last 2 years. And all the investors, stakeholders, they are looking after ESG performance of the company. What we at Mahindra, how we actually, consider sustainability, we have said that sustainability is our core purpose. When we define a business strategy or what the business is all about, we have said sustainability or ESG is our core purpose. And when we say ESG, it has all the facets of ESG, right from governance to human rights to upstream, downstream supply chain, to customer, to product, to environment, everything together. And when we come from automotive and farm sector, I always have to answer questions like, you are in automobile business, how the automobile business, is working towards air pollution and everything. So believe me when I say that, over the years, we have learned that sustainable way has helped us not only in, giving the right strategies for the business, but also has helped us to, bottom line. So if I have to give 1 or 2 examples, we have, what we have done is we have said publicly that we are going to be carbon neutral by 2040. We have signed on science-based target. So science-based target, just for audience's understanding, is basically a company has to sign a particular target of how much carbon emission they will reduce, which is in line with the global temperature rise. So that is the tools which are being used, and then company announce it publicly that we are treated to the science-based target, and we are going to reduce this much. So when we are doing all this, the main question what board was asking us, why we are doing this. So we have shown some examples wherein shifting to a renewable energy or shifting to green energy is not only beneficial for the environment, but it has saved us so much of corrodes. So just to give some example, almost we have completed more than I'll just example of 3 to 4 years, but we have saved more than 100 crores just through sustainability initiatives. So it is a business opportunity. It is something that companies should do, which helps the bottom line, which provides with you the opportunity. So if you know our Mahindra Sero business, which is into vehicle recycling. So this is the idea which has come up, or which has arisen from all these discussions of sustainability and brainstorming of this, that how the business should go ahead and what it should do in sustainability. So we have a specific sustainability framework wherein we also say that how the sustainability help to building enduring businesses. So this is all about, how businesses should look at. Businesses also should look at high impact projects, and the innovation and scale of impact is very, very important. A very simple idea, if I can give an example of, LED lighting. So when plants started LED lighting and everything, it's a very simple idea, just energy efficient lighting. But what we have done is across all our locations in India, of course, and almost we have covered more than 150 suppliers. We have covered 80% of our dealerships, and we have also taken up this Ujala scheme for our employees. So this LED, a very simple idea, was implemented across all the facets of stakeholders, and it has given a huge impact in terms of reduction of CO2. So take a very simple idea, scale it around and take something like some innovation ideas. So we are working with EESL, and we have taken a very simple, very innovative idea of this is, I think, the first idea in India wherein we are talking about energy efficient DG sets. So we are increasing the efficiency of a DG set from 45% to almost 85%. And that's the innovation that we have developed. So we are working on these two aspects, innovation and scale of impact, which is helping us. And just to give some, since we are talking about supply chain more, last one comment from my side is, in supply chain, we have gone ahead slowly. First, we have done the skill building of suppliers. So we have developed EHS Plus Center 3 to 4 years back, along with Symbiosis and Institute of Sustainable Communities, wherein we are building sustainability or ESG related skill with suppliers, and not only Mahindra suppliers, but other OEMs also are part of this particular program. After the skill building, we have developed a supplier maturity model, wherein how the supplier will, after skill building, what they will do, how they will do everything. We are doing the factory engagement programs with suppliers, and we are identifying and facilitating what initiatives they can do at their factory locations. How can they be carbon neutral, or how can they work on this path? So this is the kind of a model we have specifically developed for suppliers. And just to end this particular question, Mahindra, with all these efforts, have just, you may have read in the newspaper that it's the first Indian auto company to be in Dow Jones Sustainability World Index. So it is a proud moment for us, and all these things are paying, and companies that looked at by global investors as a top 10 percentile best ESG company in the world. So this is how we are going ahead, and we think that sustainability has to be integrated in the business, then it works. Thank you so much, if I have taken more time.
Thank you, Kiran, for bringing the larger aspect of sustainability into focus, and also talking about the supplier integration into the responsible behavior of the organization, and also bringing profitability at the core of it. I think one learning that all of us have is that they both have to intertwine each other. Innovation has to be, combined innovation for sustainability and competitive advantage. I'll move to the next speaker, Manish. And Manish, you also had a great suggestion while we're discussing that ESG has to be seen from a very larger perspective. Though it's strategic, it's also from a larger perspective. What is being done at Merck's procurement in order to make it very large? Because one thing that I always hear, and as an academic, I can make this comment, is that we talk about engaging with suppliers, but large, and it's not particular to any company, but large number of suppliers' tires live into the dark zones even today, right? And hence, this becomes a very important imperative for us to bring them back into the domain, both in terms of scopes of emissions in supply chain that may fall into E, but social as well as in governance terms. So what do you think of it? And yeah.
No, thank you, Dr. Singh. Firstly, it's a privilege and an honor to be here with this esteemed panel. I'm at least looking forward to some fantastic learnings coming through from all of them. And before I go into the supplier path, maybe just prudent for me to speak a little bit about what Maersk's overall vision as a logistics or as one of the largest logistics companies, especially also because Kellogg's, Nestle, and Mahindra are key customers of ours. So I definitely want to put across a good impression on that front first. So for us, at least, as you correctly said, Dr. Singh, decarbonization is a big part and a big discussion point in the logistics industry. I think everybody is well aware of that. But our vision, at least, is to, if I can use the word, attack the ESG agenda on a wholesome level, looking at all the components of environment, social and governance, and other components on diversity and inclusion and so on. So if we map it out, we'll end up with 13 or 15 parameters on ESG. So decarb will obviously be the one that will attract the most attention and be the highest impact, because climate and emissions is high on the agenda. But anti-corruption, labor relations, banning use of child labor, responsible tax, supplier diversity, being an equal opportunity employer on diversity and inclusion. These are also aspects of an ESG strategy that we are focusing on. The reason why we are focusing on this as a company is I think at least on four main reasons. First of all, customers. This is a huge customer demand. All our major customers are demanding a green supply chain, and of course that is something that we are then obligated to deliver. And then it has to be delivered on an end-to-end supply chain, not just on our ships, but also what you were highlighting, that it also needs to cover the end-to-end part of our tier 1 supplier base, and if we want to be ambitious, also go into the tier 2 supplier base as well. Then it's also from a employee standpoint as well. The new employees that are coming through, the ones that are not from my generation, at least the millennials, are very motivated on the sustainability agenda. So if we want to attract good talent to work for us and create a meaningful difference to our customers, then it's important that we live the vision and we live the values of driving a comprehensive ESG agenda. So that's a little bit about what we are trying to do overall as a company. And then in the specific part of it, of course, we are committed on decarbonization. We were also present at the COP summit, and we have committed that we will decarbonize our customers' supply chains within the next 20 years. That is by 2040. This will become a serious metric also for all the senior executives in Maersk. So that is the level of commitment that we're looking at, and as a part of that, we will break up our targets on scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 within a particular time frame, which we are working on. Then coming to my particular area, which was your original question, Dr. Singh, on the procurement part. So I've been tasked in the company of implementing a wholesome ESG strategy across our global supplier base. We have tens of thousands of global suppliers, because we are a logistics company with billions of dollars in spend. And secondly, on a tier 1 level, it's tens of thousands, and when we go to tier 2, we probably end up talking in millions. So the scale of the exercise is very large for us to do this. It is imperative we do it because we can't deliver the promise of an end-to-end supply chain without involving our suppliers in the process. Our approach of going about this is going to be focused on a lot of supplier collaboration, a lot of, if I can call, a next stage evolution of our supplier relationship management framework. Just rather than talking cost and delivery and these traditional procurement items, we will actually sit and discuss investments and co-development on green solutions. For example, if we take trucking, which is a huge logistics spend for us and a critical part of our supply chain, we are giving a lot of thought to how can we work with trucking unions all over the world on emission control, on child labor aspects, and what is it that they need from us in order to make a difference. That doesn't mean that we won't focus on cost. I want to make that clear also, but it will have to be a balanced discussion where, if there is a trade-off to be made, then that trade-off will have to be made for the right reasons and has to have the right value attached to it. From an internal standpoint, clearly a strong digital platform will be critical in order for us to drive this agenda. This is not something that we can do on legacy tools of Excel and email. So there's a lot of interesting conversations we are having with a lot of these major digital players in the world on how can we establish a platform which can help suppliers come in, provide their inputs, their bottlenecks on a portal or in some form online, and which can then enable us to extract an end-to-end overview, which we can work with our customers on resolving their green issues on the supply chain, and also work with our suppliers. And lastly, there has to be a lot of process standardization naturally around this. There's a lot of softer human resource elements here on changing the procurement manager's mindset. I know that a lot of people from my generation at least come from a very hard cost-cutting mindset, and so that's a cultural shift that we have to bring about. That asking people to look at a new total value of ownership model where you look at cost, but then you also look at the price of not having a sustainable supply chain and what's the trade-off there and what's the right decision to be taken. So a lot of things work in progress here, but the goal really for us as a company is to have a sustainable end-to-end supply chain, or at least be in a position to provide a transparent overview of our end-to-end supply chain to enable a constructive dialogue with our customers and our suppliers.
Thank you, Manish. I think that was good to understand that a large number of customers are demanding sustainability in one form or another, and also there's a need for organizations themselves to become more transparent and showcase their progress on sustainability in one form or another, and move together in a very collaborative way towards the climate neutral goals. Now I will call on Ashish from Nestle. I think food is the major contributor to the carbon emission. We have two gentlemen, Ashish and Saurabh here. So I'll start with Ashish. Ashish, what has been the focus of sustainability at Nestle? I've seen some very good global presentations during COP26 also, and otherwise also over the internet. What has been the sustainability strategy, and what are the future challenges that any organization like Nestle faces?
Thank you, Dr. Singh, and thank you for inviting me to this panel, and a big hi to all the panel members. So I think you rightly said what we understand is that 30% of the carbon emission globally is contributed by food supply chain. So food is a very important part of this whole equation, and 60% of that is contributed by milk supply chain. So milk is the single largest contributor to carbon emission globally when it comes to food supply chain, and we deal a lot in food products, so it becomes a priority for us. For us, the starting point is that, look, as a responsible company and responsible citizen in the company, we care for our planet, we care for our ecosystem in which we work for, we care for the future generations which are going to face some very adverse conditions if we do not arrest what is happening today in terms of global warming. Now, we all know about the extent of global warming which has happened. I think the standard rate of global warming or heating of this planet was 0.2 to 0.3 degrees per decade. Between 2000 and 2010, it accelerated to 0.7 for the decade, and we don't have the numbers after that exact, but what I understand, it's close to 0.8 degrees for the next decade. Now, if we don't do anything and if we let business as usual from now to 2050, right, the global warming or the temperature will heat up by, this planet will heat up by 3.2 degrees centigrade. And if that happens, this will not be a place for us to live. because with that kind of heating, there'll be total imbalance in ecological system. We are already seeing what is happening in terms of the typhoons and the glacier meltdowns and the earthquakes and so on and so forth. So if we keep business as usual, by 2050, this planet will not be a place to live, will not be able to live because of severe adverse climatic condition change that will happen. Now, if we commit to decarbonization and net zero by 2050, we as in the entire country, entire world, global world, with all corporates and all countries, this global heating can be limited to from 3.2 degrees to 1.5 degrees. So the planet will still heat up by 1.5 degree, right? There'll be much more adverse ecological and environmental disruptions, but it'll still be a place where we'll manage to live and our next generation would live. So this is the starting point from us that it is not a strategy, it is not a priority, it is mission critical. It is something which has to be done and has to be done very, very fast by all of us. And I personally believe 2050 is too late, because if we do it by 2050, the planet will still heat up by 1.5 degrees, and it will create much more issues than what is happening today. So I think all of us have to get together. No organization can do it together. We are all in it together. And once we start the traction, I'm sure there'll be tipping point which will come very soon. And then we'll accelerate this journey. And I would like to work upon with the whole ecosystem to do it much faster than 2050. Now, if you ask us, do we have a roadmap for 2050? Yes, we have a roadmap that we have to do 20% reduction by 2025, 50% reduction by 2030, and net zero by 2050. But are all building blocks in place? The answer is no. And we're discovering these building blocks as we go through this journey. So let me put this journey into various parts. So for us, it starts with upstream supply chain, which is sourcing of commodities, ingredients, packing materials, and so on and so forth. So there's a big part that we need to address. And for Nestle, 70% of the carbon footprint in its upstream supply chain. So for us, the upstream supply chain is very, very important. So we have to work with our suppliers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, for them to first understand what is sustainable sourcing, and then help them with whatever knowledge that we get from our research institute, from various organizations that are helping us, from all of us who are here, who can collaborate, so that the upstream supply chain piece is fixed. Now, when I say upstream supply chain, it will require our farmers and suppliers to change their practices. Sustainable sourcing also means that we raise the standard of living for farmers and suppliers. They use good quality fertilizers. They use good dairy farming practices. Child labor and so on and so forth is eliminated. So it not only improves the standard of living for upstream supply chain, it also improves the quality of food that we buy from the upstream supply chain. So it helps in both ways, in raising the standard of living, doing the right productive and efficient sustainable farming practices, and improving the quality of food that we buy. So for us, 70% is an upstream supply chain. Then manufacturing is around 10%, logistics is 5%, packaging is 10%, and so on and so forth. So then the factory piece comes in, where how do we make sure that the conversion and the manufacturing operations that we have is carbon free? What kind of fuels are we using? Are we moving towards biofuels, or are we still dependent on fossil fuels, or something in between? So that's a journey that we have. One of the panelists, Kiran, spoke about renewable energy. So that's another focus that we have. And I think this piece is very clear to us, and we should be able to hit net zero in the manufacturing piece much before 2050. Now, when it comes to plastic and recyclable economy, and how do we make sure that the plastic that we use, or any packaging that we use for our food product, doesn't end up in waste or in litter or in ocean or whatever. Now, that's a big challenge today. We do not have a circular economy in place. In many parts of the world, there are initiatives which are being made. I'll give you an example of one of our brands. Those of you who like to drink coffee, you would have heard about Nespresso. So we have these Nespresso pods, and we are trying to put a system in place where our consumers can either return or we can pick up from our consumers when we're delivering to their house, or there are collection points in which they can deposit these pods. We can pick up these pods, segregate, and then work with service providers to get it back to the recyclable economy and back to the manufacturers for reuse. So we are trying to do that. We are successful to the extent of 60% in Europe, and that's very, very good good news. And I'm sure we can go there very fast to 100%. But when it comes to India, it's as of today, it's literally very, very difficult because we do not have any organized collection mechanism in this country. We work with NGOs, we work with municipalities, but there's no holistic approach. So that is one thing I think in this country we need to work together and develop, is how do we make sure that we work towards this circular economy, we work towards collection. Now in India, we know that any waste which has a value attached to it, the circular economy works very well. All of us know about the beer bottles and the liquor bottles and beverages bottles. There's a value attached to that leftover empty bottle, and hence there is a recycling which takes place, and you will be amazed the way the recycling takes place for these items and how does they get reused in the value chain. But we do not today have value attached to maybe if you're buying a mineral water bottle, what the empty bottle that is left over, there's no value attached to it, and hence the issue of recycling and collection is a challenge. The packaging that we use for our products, the laminates and there is no value attached to it. Yes, the outer cartons has some value attached to it, and there is a certain level of recycling which takes place. I think this is the biggest challenge in our country, that we need to work together with service providers, with startups, with NGOs, with municipalities. If we can get this collection mechanism working, and once the collection mechanism and segregation process is in place, we can work towards recycling all the packaging in some way or other with the key manufacturers. So this is one thing which I'll urge all of us, that let's collaborate. And I'm sure you guys are doing some work across your value chain, or you have some experience. We have some experience, and as we collaborate, there's an EPR forum. There are a lot of forums that where we meet, but still this is the big thing to crack. So that's the packaging part. Transportation logistics, there is a way forward that is defined globally. We have to move away from the fuels that we use towards hydrogen and other forms of sustainable fuel. It will require some investment in each country by the governments or globally. We have to change the vehicles that we drive, the commercial vehicles that are produced. There's a cost to it initially, but I think it can be done over a period of time. There's a matter of commitment and putting your mind and energy behind it. So the solution is available. It's a matter of how do we transition to that solution. And then end of consumer, end of product life cycle. So whatever you buy at home and you don't dispose of a glass jar, say for example, what do you do with it? If you buy a Nescafe jar, and unless you throw it, how do you make use of it? So that's another challenge that we have, that end of product life cycle usage of all the products and services that we consume. How do we make sure that we create again a circular economy? So these are the few challenges that we have, but I think there is the solutions are available. I have started working in this field for the last 3 years, and every year we are making progress. Every year we are finding new solutions. Every year we are finding able partners and service providers and collaborators who are helping us. So the journey is moving forward. It was a slow journey initially because one, we didn't have knowledge and skill set and the traction from the ecosystem to do it. Now slowly the knowledge is coming. We are getting a lot of information on how to proceed forward. We have our own research center now, which is helping us. The traction with ecosystem is improving. There are a lot of like-minded companies that we are working today who are helping us with this. And a lot of employees are getting interested in this. And I think Manish spoke about millenniums. A lot of millenniums, they come to us and says, we want to make our career in sustainability. And this got us thinking that how do we make sure that we not only inspire the younger generation to contribute to improvement of the planet and caring for planet, but how do we inspire them to make a career or living out of sustainability? So that's another agenda that we need to have. We cannot be part-time sustainability managers. We have to have sustainability as our full-time agenda and make sure that there's full traction, collaboration from the ecosystem. I'm very happy if Merck is going to have a green supply chain by 2040. I think you are making our task simpler, Manish, because this will help us. We do a lot of ocean transport, as you know. So we need partners like you and other ecosystem partners who are like-minded, who want to take this forward. And once we all collaborate, there's no limit. Personally, for me, 2050 is too late. I really welcome your idea of doing it by 2040 at Merck. All of us have to commit, accelerate, and I'm sure there is a way out. Because even if we go to net zero by 2050, please remember this planet will heat up by 1.5 degrees, and that is going to be very, very difficult. So that's the only point of view I have. We don't have all the answers, but I think we can find all the answers together if we work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. And I think that was a very honest exposition of intent and the constraints that are around the concept of sustainable, responsible businesses. One thing that is very interesting to see that people want to move now out of their own sphere of influence, which business created, to a more collaborative framework. You call it collaboration, Manish call it platforms. And I think these are very interesting trends that are emerging because this is a common goal. It's a common problem, common goal, which needs to be tackled in a more joint manner through vertical integration with your farmers or suppliers and horizontal integration with your competitors or even other non-competitors in the market. So with this, I will call upon Saurabh Lal from Kellogg. Saurabh, the same question goes to you. Would like to know what initiatives are you taking, your organization is taking in terms of making supply chain more decarbonized? And what are the challenges that we see?
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Very difficult part for me. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. Very difficult because you put me right in the center. So a lot of very good points have been discussed. So I can't do that, and I have to leave some for the people who come after me. So that being said, for Kellogg, sustainability is all about creating better days, and the statement is creating better days for 3 billion people by 2030. And it's got, around nourishment, around feeding people, around nurturing the planet and our society and our community, and living the values. But I was just, when Kiran was speaking, I was thinking about when I started my career. For us, environment, right, was only around managing the effluent treatment plant, or ensuring that the stacks from manufacturing point of view, ensuring that the pollution control board permissions are available for the stack emission. That was all it is. And it was also a sub part of where the safety officer of the plant would be considered, right? So 10% of his time. From there, I think the biggest shift that we have seen is people are talking long term. Right. So now even a 10-year target is probably not something that a business would look at. And they'd look at a 20, 30-year target. 2050 is not that far away, like Ashish was saying, and probably we need to accelerate. So I think that's the one very big change that I see between over the last 20 years itself, that the businesses have started taking a more holistic view. ESG has come clearly center stage. It is not just one of the functions or one of the things that people need to do. It's really one of the very important imperatives for the time. The second piece around this is that ESG is now expanded much more than just environmental impact. It's around the planet. it's around the people, and it's around building a sustainable business model on the back of it, because you cannot have very good environmental practices and an unsustainable business as a result of it, right? So it's also a discovery that these three things can actually go together, right? So we have moved away from just water, energy, waste, or material consumption to saying, what do we do about the community? What do we do about end-to-end supply chains? That's what my take would be. That's how the changes have happened in the ESG space. There are three very big challenges that I see, especially not just for supply chains, but for businesses overall. Number one is business growth versus sustainability. Right? If you look at, you can say that I will consume X amount of water per kg of production that we do, and I will reduce this X amount by 5% year on year, 2% year on year. That's a good goal. But if your business is growing at 15% and your absolute consumption of water is going to go at the same pace, the per kg may not make a huge difference. So that way, how do you balance out your growth versus your sustainability? If you're going to put up more plants, how are you building sustainability at the beginning itself? Do they start off with sustainable sources of power, or is that something that you say, okay, 5 years later, first let me get the plant up, 5 years later, I'm going to start thinking about what do I build sustainability into it, right? So this balance between growth and sustainability for a business is going to be extremely important. The second one is around transparency and traceability. And this one is going to tie up to the third point that I want to make. Transparency and traceability is about, I can say that I sustain, let's say the largest vegetable oil consumption in the world is palm oil. And I can make a statement as a company that I source palm oil sustainably. But what is the measure for it? What is the traceability for it? If someone wants to really go into your sheets and audit, did you really get it sustainably? You say you got it probably from a supplier who said it's sustainable, but what are the practices that he's doing? So how are you going to prove sustainability? And this is going to be a very important piece, not just to prove to the world outside, but to prove to yourself that your actions are actually transparent and they are traceable, but also to ensure that with this, you create sustainability on a lasting basis. So for example, if you're tied up with the roundtable on sustainable palm oil, what is it that they are doing to give you confidence that that palm oil is actually being sustainable, and it's not just in the name, it's not just in the name or a certificate that you are getting. That's the second part, right? And therefore, the third part is, how do you measure the actual impact, right? Company A, company B, company C, government A, government B, each of them measures sustainability differently, right? And I was just reading through the report that Unilever CEO had made on their sustainability practice. And he says, yes, we have created jobs for 1 million people, but I find it very difficult to understand what is the impact on that 1 million lives. Right? And for him, that therefore becomes a challenge in the future. Do we have a common model to measure sustainability or that impact? Each company has got their own. And as you read through the reports, yes, there are common practices. Yes, there are some common measures. But if you look at it holistically, if you want to reach the 2050 goal, is everyone moving in the same direction, or has everyone got blocks of it that they want to work on? The last bit here for me would be collaboration. And I don't think that the long-term goals will be possible unless companies now start coming together. And Dr. Singh, you talked about something like logistical collaboration. What other places of collaboration are possible where we can support each other on the sustainability journey? So, Dr. Singh, in short, that's what I thought that I should talk about.
Thank you, Saurabh. I'll bring Sanjay into the picture because after food, and as we say, sourcing is the biggest source of emissions. Agriculture happens to be one of the biggest, emitter in that sense of the term, agriculture and allied activities. So Sanjay, what kind of initiatives do you think are being undertaken? I know your friend Siv also is going to talk on the same subject, but I think one can find tune this and talk about in terms of supply chains themselves.
Thank you. So thank you for inviting me. Like Saurabh and Ashish, I do not have a lot of good news to share with you because they are the brands and their value chains are very well established, and there is an element of profitability which helps them to do those positive things which they have been doing. Whereas most of the sector which is outside of these brands is commodity sector, and where it's a cutthroat competition, and virtually the supplier doesn't listen to the customer, because if the customer is not like an ITC or a Cargill or a Louis Dreyfus or some brands like Unilever and Procter & Gamble, customer doesn't care. So the supplier doesn't care. So supplier is not ready to invest a single penny into the responsibility that we are all talking about since last half an hour, and the margins are so low that we can't even think of those water stewardship that Nestle and ITC have put in by bringing the communities together. So nobody does that other than these big organizations. So the situation actually on the ground is worsening, whether it is water or it is anything related to the chemicals in food, or it is related to even the conditions of the average smallholder farmer. So when I grew up in Haryana, so I grew up and I heard about all these conflicts related to water long time ago, and when I was a child. So when I came back after my studies and working outside Haryana, I came back to Haryana, and when we were doing a water stewardship project in the rice belt in Karnal, and I asked them that now what is the situation, and they said we have solved the problem of water. I said, what do you mean? I keep hearing that there is a water table which is going down. So how did you solve it? They said that now the technology has given us not just the pumps, but the submersible pumps and the law of the land, whatever it may be. If I have a piece of land, I can pump as much I want from the bottom. So we no more fight on the distribution of canal water. So the situation is almost everywhere in India, a similar one. And same goes for increasing use of pesticides and increasing use of chemicals and other issues. So in Indian context, when we look at the knowledge which is flowing in from the Western part, some of those solutions have not worked. And that's why recently the Prime Minister also said that we can't really borrow the Western template because our issues are different. And we keep getting such reminders like the kind of labor strike in an iPhone factory, or the farmers just not saying yes to the reformative bills because the issue of S and issue of G, that is the social issues and the governance related issues, are so priority for us that sometimes we think that let's focus more on G and S and instead of the environmental issues. So the issues related to the health is something that which nobody is talking about. Only probably in the Western countries there is a premium available for a low residue produce, and although people are talking about organic, and sometimes they are fooled by a supplier for selling the organic, but it needs to be seen that how much percentage of that is actually organic and how much of that is whether somebody has actually done the proper mass balance of all the things which are going in over there. So when we talk about the sustainable sourcing, it is different from an organization to organization. Sometimes the good things have actually confused people. So when Bill Gates and Azim Premji and Warren Buffett and Mark Zuckerberg, when they came forward and they said, okay, we will pledge our wealth, 50% of that for the responsibility. and countries like India, they came out with the CSR law. So at that time, everybody thought that the responsibility is the way forward, which was a good starting point. But it also confused people as to what the sustainability is, that we need to be resilient and we need to be doing our food production in a regenerative manner. And that's why probably the UN called it COP for CCD, for the desertification in India, because they realize that nobody is talking about these things. So as a supply chain buyer, when you want to buy your goods, you want to go and talk to your suppliers. Suppliers are not really talking about. So what exactly you do? So my 2 cents in that would be that it all boils down to what is the objective of that company, that organization. So whether if we are able to embed those objectives so that in addition to the economic progress, we are also able to bring in those issues which cater to the stakeholders' requirements. So not just embedding the objectives, but we also probably look into, instead of outsourcing everything, we have to be taking responsibility of what is happening in the supply chain of our suppliers. So that's where we see that there is a lot to be desired, and we can work with them on at least the lowest hanging fruits. So the thought which has been towards supply chain, so today's event is also supply chain. So we always think that there is a chain and the food moves along the chain, but actually the life is not like that. Life is more like webs, or more like cycles. So everything goes into the cycle. So if you see in the olden days, whether the locks were being manufactured, or in a city like Bikaner, you have Sonar Ki Gawad, or you have some fruit clusters, or you have the Murrah breed of buffalo, or Tharparkar, or even Sahiwal in Punjab. So those clusters, there was not just an ecosystem, but also a lot of knowledge around that. And that ensured that those clusters became the hub of activity, and they were very, very sustainable, and all the pieces were put in place. For example, if you work in that kind of thought, you ensure that the sourcing of both the products and services, they take care of that, and you bring in a community of practice into that particular place. So there are a lot of I would say frugal solutions which emanate from the bottom up. And as we will see in case of agriculture also, that finally when we will come out with solutions, it will be so Indian solutions, so local solutions, that we would be able to find out such solutions which are workable. In Karnal, for example, there was a 3-pond system or 5-pond system where the filtration of water took place, which was like not a borrowed system, it was a local system. And the lastly, which I would like to say, that we have to think about our incentives again, because most of the incentives are towards the exploitation of the same land, or the exploitation of the same economic resources, whereas we have to think about linking it up with the overall regeneration and overall resilience of those things, so that we look at our business models once again, whether our business model, the kind of reality check that we do, whether they are really serving our purpose, or they are only increasing the profitability of the enterprise.
Thank you, Sanjay. I think that's a very well put up. A country where it has an ecosystem of smaller players contributing significantly to the GDP, and challenges that they face and they are forced to face are very different. Solutions will have to be very collaborative, as well as it should come from the community as a whole. Regulations will play a big role. This is where one has to see that regulations also pave way for collaboration. Now I call upon Aanchal Sood from SAP. technology, they say, suddenly has given hope for bringing what Manish, Ashish, and all of us are saying, a transparency within the ecosystem. Now, technology in its traditional forms will also have to give way to newer forms for building platforms. I just had a conversation yesterday where somebody was trying to provide an optimization tools as a solution to sustainability problem without having geocoding, visibility, and mapping. And I think we should really not lose the race of building the right kind of technology platforms for bringing supply chain, profitability and responsibility together. So, Anshul, what are your views on this? And how should technology adopt, and what is the things that SAP is doing in order to take this forward?
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Very pleased to share, how SAP is working on the sustainability topic and what all we are doing. I'm not sure I'll be able to do justice in next few minutes, but at least I can, give you highlights of what we are working on and what we have available, what is the path forward. Very thought-provoking views from everyone on the panel on the sustainability topic. This is certainly one of the key concerns, and it is not just now about profitability and sustainability on the side. It is now about how do we do them together, how to be profitable and sustainable. It's not a choice anymore, right? And let me just reiterate, as we heard from multiple panelists, on the need to understand and manage environmental impact through every part of business in real time. We are talking of transparency. We are talking of not only scope 1, scope 2 emissions, which many organizations have pledged to reduce, but also particularly complex is scope 3 emissions, because now we are talking of upstream and downstream value chain, right? This is the scale. And when we bring supply chain into perspective, it's about end-to-end supply chain transparency. It's not just raw material sourcing. It begins at the design of the product. Are we designing responsible products which can support circular economy, right? What are the decisions and considerations at the design stage, from design to raw material sourcing, even until the last mile delivery, and then to the product returns and recycling processes. So the impact and the opportunity that supply chain has to contribute to sustainability is huge. At SAP, our vision is to work with our customers into enabling these intelligent enterprises based on our shared values in chasing zero. This chasing zero is zero emissions, zero waste, and zero inequality. We see, I think many of the panelists before me have touched upon the importance of having platforms about digitization. Now, we see this digitization as a responsibility to contribute and solve, work to solving this problem. This consideration of sustainability is not isolated from day-to-day decision making. In supply chain, we are making decisions daily about transportation, about production. We are making, supply chain end-to-end is a whole orchestration of decisions to get the product right. Now, how do we include sustainability into the fabric of these day-to-day decision making? So here we are working along with S/4HANA Cloud, and we have enterprise applications in broadly, I'll talk about sustainability in 4 broad areas: climate action, circular economy, social responsibility, and then comes visibility of compliance and reporting based on international GRI standards. We have heard it from Kiranji, Manishji, this cannot be an isolated after activity. This has to be included into the business transactions. And at SAP, we are that way uniquely positioned in the impact that we can, create in solving the problem. Even optimizing supply chain operations themselves have opportunity for both financial and environmental benefits. We are talking of efficient design, responsible manufacturing, even planning, right? I'll take a pause here and give you an example of planning. Now, footprint analysis. Think of when you are taking decisions of manufacturing, being able to see the projected quantities, what you're going to manufacture, and what would be the carbon impact or emissions for them. So while taking the planning decisions, having the visibility at a global level, where what are the emissions and what is the footprint across different locations. These are the some examples of, starting with responsible design, doing efficient planning. Now, within planning, I think in India, many customers, when we discuss the planning complexity, secondary transportation is one of the key concerns. And with secondary transportation, we have extra handling of material, we have extra emissions, extra cost. There lies in the opportunity with better supply chain planning. We are contributing not only to profitability, but also to sustainability. And right from there to manufacturing. I was reading a very, the 11 CEOs in September came together with World Economic Forum. There was a session on how digitization in manufacturing is helping them in reducing emissions, in reducing resource usage, in being able to use fewer resources, right? So digitization itself is not just about profitable or enabling a technology as an enabler. This is the opportunity where optimizing and bringing transparency into all of these processes, right from planning, designing, planning, manufacturing, and then delivering transportation. Dr. Singh, you earlier also touched upon, we have opportunity in how do we efficiently not only plan transportation, but in terms of backhauling, how do we reach out into the network for efficient usage, not only for one organization, but for the community? How do we efficiently utilize the resources so as to minimize the emissions? And lastly, up to asset maintenance. Now, along the whole supply chain comes in all the considerations. It's not only emissions, it's also safety, right? How do we ensure safety? How do we ensure efficient use of resources? And like asset maintenance, there is huge opportunity in front of us in terms of maintenance, leveraging technology like predictive analytics, like sensor-based insights we use in maintenance. We also did a use case with augmented reality. How do you manage asset maintenance processes using augmented reality? So you don't have to be physically there, but how do you use all of these latest technologies, deploy them to ensure safety, to ensure efficiency, and this works both for profitability and sustainability. When we digitalize supply chain, it doesn't just cost less to run, you consume less energy, fewer resources, and lesser waste and emissions. Now, all this, I think if I take a step back, earlier business transactions were not digitalized, and we have come a long way from there. Now, business transactions are digitized, but on sustainability angle, we have to include sustainability into the fabric of these business transactions going forward. That's how we see the technology's role evolving in contributing to solve this problem. Now, great thing about digital transformation is it doesn't have to happen all at once to be effective. Incremental steps can be taken to digitize supply chain operations. And these solutions, they enable how to gather, analyze data. This is the very nature of the digitization of processes, to bring in the transparency, to bring the auditability, which we earlier talked about. So Dr. Singh, I just want to conclude with, we are working on a lot of initiatives. Many SAP solutions already have sustainability, like environment, health and safety solutions, already has emissions management on. We have solutions to help with incident management. How do we ensure safety of the people? We have IoT solutions for installing sensors. But going forward, we are also partnering with leading customers globally to expand our sustainability portfolio and contribute into solving this problem digitally. So very
Thank you, Achal. Thank you for this particular note. I think you're right. Data and visibility is going to play a big role. There are a lot of questions on this to everybody. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. It may not be totally true according to me, but yes, it gives the direction in a big way. So anyone can take this question, but I will put this to Ashish first. I think he's not. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dr. Singh, I've been having some connectivity problem. Could you please repeat the question?
The measurement data issue and measurement issues in making a strategy for decarbonization. If you can not measure it, you cannot mitigate it, improve it.
I agree with you. I think it's a very difficult when you start the journey because you don't know what to measure, how to measure. So what we have learned is that you have to employ a professional service provider who is very good at that, who have already have proven tools. So we work in Nestle with a company called South Pole. South Pole helps us to do the entire measurement, define the KPIs, and help us with what is happening in the marketplace and how we can measure it. They also are responsible for auditing what improvements we are doing and measuring it going forward. So my advice would be that get help. There are a lot of professional people who know how to do it. Don't waste your time. Get them involved. They will tell you how to measure it. And once you start measuring it, then you start improving. And you're right, unless you measure, you cannot improve. So the challenge is to get the right measurement in place, put the baseline, and then work on it. And once you put the right baseline, you will find answers because it will show you what is the contribution analysis, which are the elements which are contributing high, and so on and so forth.
Thank you, Ashish. I think this is a right way to go about in the world of uncertainty of even measuring data. This has been the only question that has been asked. So, and we have crossed the time limit we have set for ourselves. I thank all of you for contributing in a significant way. As this is not a panel discussion, we would not have too many panel questions. It was a town hall, and we kept it like a town hall. Your ideas and your practices and your views were important to us. So I thank all of you for contributing this, and we also thank SAP and Blue Wonders, the two companies are collaborating to make ISCM Sustainability Conclave, a reality. And I think this clearly indicates that this is the future of collaboration, and that really needs to be taken into account while addressing issues of such a global importance, but even a local and firm level importance. So I will give it back to Jaisal, and hi Shivkumar, welcome. And I think we're keen to hear the agriculture as the core of the biggest emitter, and your work through ITC Orchapal and agriculture in ITC is something which is a guideline for us, and your thought processes to our guideline for us. So looking